Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you very much for those kind words. Good morning. It is a great honor to be with you here at what I'm told is the largest regular Jewish conference in North America. I want to thank you to all the member temples and congregants of this great organization for all you do to promote Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. A special salute goes to Rabbi Byfield and the members of Temple Beth Ahava in my hometown of Richmond. A special salute goes to the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism and its work in the promotion of religious liberty and human progress. Congratulations as you celebrate its 50th anniversary. Being here at such a large gathering of Jewish people in America, it reminds me of a story that is often told by the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. On a visit to China, on his first turn as Prime Minister, Bibi Netanyahu tells of a story and a discussion that he had with then President of China, Jiang Zemin. They were at a dinner, and the President of China said to Bibi, "I admire the Jewish people." And Bibi in return said, "I admire the Chinese." The President then said, "You know, the Jews and the Chinese are two of the oldest people in history, two of the oldest civilizations in the world." And Bibi counters, and I think self-deprecatingly stuck his foot in his mouth and said, "Well, the Indians are also one of the oldest people." But Bibi then said to the President, he said, "There's a difference." So the Chinese President says, "What's the difference?" Bibi asks, "How many Chinese are there?" The President responds and said, "There's 1.2 billion Chinese people." Bibi said, "There's also about 1 billion Indians." And then he asks the President, "How many Jews do you think there are?" The President said, "I don't know." He said, "There are 13 million Jews." And there was silence in the room, because 13 million represents a small suburb of Beijing. And it's odd because Jews represented about 10% of the Roman Empire. And by extrapolation today, that would mean the Jewish population of the world should be 250 million, 250 million people today. But that's not what happened. And Bibi goes on to tell the story. Part of the reason is the Jewish people for thousands of years became a diaspora, and a diaspora only. There was no homeland. But there was something that kept the Jewish people together. Certainly the tenets of our faith and the commitment to our God. But there was an overwhelming, genuine commitment to the values of freedom of choice, to pluralism, to the promotion of the rights of minority, and to the commitment of the rule of law, not men. And so when I look at gatherings like this is the reason why our people were able to survive over the thousands of years. It is the commitment to action to promote those values and ensure their lasting impact on our world. There's no question that the Union for Reform Judaism has become part of the moral fabric of our country and its communities. I know it remains a critical force for social justice in my own community of Richmond, just a few hours south of here. One of my most vivid memories as a Jewish child growing up in Richmond came on that fateful Yom Kippur day in 1973. I was just 10 years old. I remember standing on the steps in front of my temple after services let out. I heard grown-ups around me talking about Israel being attacked on that holiest day of the calendar. I heard them recall what it was like to live as a Jew before Israel came into being. They feared that those days might return. That experience was etched into my memory. But it was only years later that I truly understood the critical role that our country, America, can play in coming to the aid of a fellow democracy. Visitors to our country often ask, why is it that America and Israel are so close? Well, there are many answers to that question. Yes, Israel is a critical pillar of U.S. national security strategy. Yes, Israel fights the same war that we do against the spread of radicalism and its hatred. And yes, a strong Israel provides a more stable and more hospitable Middle East for U.S. interests. No question our strategic ties to Israel are important. But Israel also cherishes the values we do. Israel represents the triumph of the human spirit over impossible odds. Israel represents a fierce dedication to saving and improving life for all. And Israel's spirit lives through its people. In 1942, a boy was slipped by his parents off a train bound for the gas chambers of Auschwitz. By a stroke of luck, a Catholic woman in a nearby Polish village took him in and hid him in her cupboard. After the war was finally over, that boy immigrated to Israel to begin a new life. Today, his son, Dr. Ofer Miron, heads up the now famous medical field hospital that travels the world in the wake of natural disasters. Just 3 days after the earthquake in Haiti hit last year, Dr. Miron was there helping save lives. And this year, his unit treated the wounded in the remote areas hardest hit by Japan's deadly tsunami. No question, Israel joins America in leading the way to save lives and help repair the world. Yet today, the 2,000-year-old dream of the State of Israel is in jeopardy. Not only are we witnessing the growing international isolationism of Israel at the UN, but in forums around the world. Recent developments in the Middle East have often eclipsed what is going on in Iran. But as the recent UN International Atomic Energy Agency report indicated, the specter of a nuclear Iran looms larger than ever. And that's why just yesterday, the House of Representatives passed the bipartisan Iran Threat Reduction Act, making it official U.S. policy to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons capability. Earlier this year, during the so-called Arab Spring, we were all hoping that freedom would take a leap forward in the Middle East. Now, we're beginning to see the results of the parliamentary elections in Egypt. The radical group Muslim Brotherhood has assumed a powerful position from which to spread its influence in Egypt and throughout the region. To put it mildly, this presents challenges to U.S. interests in the Middle East and raises questions about whether we can expect the new government in Egypt to respect and maintain its peace treaty with Israel. Unfortunately, the long-standing anti-Israel bias and anti-Semitic vitriol persists in the international and domestic arenas. Just last week, a prominent voice in the U.S. diplomatic corps suggested that a distinction should be made between traditional anti-Semitism, which should be condemned, and Muslim hatred for Jews, which stems from the ongoing conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. I say to you, any justification of any form of anti-Semitism must not be tolerated or condoned. Unfortunately, history is replete with examples that when it comes to the Jewish people, the world can turn a deaf ear. And that's why it is so important that you're here. That's why it's so important for you to be here, to speak out, and to be counted. Simply put, now is the time for Washington to send a clear signal to the emerging governments of the Middle East and to the entire international community that it is not okay to vilify Israel and it is not okay to demonize Jews. Nearly 7,000 miles away, Israel is on the front lines fighting the same war that we are against an enemy that despises the United States and everything that we stand for as decent human beings, everything that the Union of Reformed Judaism fights for, including the respect of life, human progress, the rights of women and minorities. But in order for us to win this great struggle, all leaders in Washington must have the courage to see the world not as we wish it to be, but as it truly is. It is not morally equivalent when the offenses of terrorists are equated with the defenses of Israel. The following story sums up Israel's dilemma. A Palestinian woman from Gaza arrives at Soroka Hospital in Beersheba for life-saving skin treatment for burns over half her body. After the conclusion of her extensive treatment, the woman is invited back for follow-up visits to the outpatient clinic. One day, she is caught at the border crossing wearing a suicide belt. Her intention? To blow herself up at the very same clinic that saved her life. What kind of culture leads one to do that? Sadly, it is a culture infused with resentment and hatred. It is this culture that underlies the Palestinians and the broader Arab world's refusal to accept Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. This is the root of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. And until Israel's enemies come to terms with this reality, a true peace will only be a distant dream. As we say in Hebrew, Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel live, and what they want is to live in peace. If the Palestinians want to live in peace in a state of their own, they must demonstrate that they are worthy of a state. Right now, there is a crisis in our community at large, the community of free-loving nations and peoples that want a better life for themselves and the next generation. America's voice has been central to that community of decent and moral nations. We must not tire in our efforts to strengthen America's long-standing commitment to freedom and human progress. And to URJ, I thank you for that commitment to Tikkun Olam. Similarly, we must not let our political differences get in the way of recognizing that there is just one lone and consistent voice for the principle of freedom and equality in the Middle East, and that is Israel's voice. As Jews, our faith calls upon us to fulfill God's commandments through mitzvot, through good deeds. Just as our system of democracy here in America requires us as citizens of this great country to speak up and take action for what we believe in. We have a special calling at this time in our world. We have a special calling as a people and as Americans to engage in these troubled times. To better balance the scales of security and prosperity, we must promote the goals of peace and justice. I want to thank you again, members of the Union of Reformed Judaism, for all you do toward that end. Thank you very much. Happy Hanukkah to all. Thank you.